Hello, I'm Israel Ekanem, the artist and innovator in residence at the Halifax Public Libraries, and I'll be teaching you how to make a podcast over the next series of videos. If you check the first one, we talked a little bit about story. If you didn't, I'll tell you that story is one of the best ways to communicate. If you want someone or if you want something you want to share to stick, find a way to tell it through a story, because a story is a connected series of events and you can tell it through words, whether you're writing it or you're speaking it, imagery, whether it's photos, whether it's videos, and language and performance and using your body and music and really any form of communication, as long as you're getting this point across. And I mentioned also that a story must always have a protagonist, an antagonist. It must have an inciting incident, a desire, a journey, crisis, climax, and of course it must have a resolution. Something that, when you have all these pieces together in a pot, and you might find that you watch a film and you're like, I don't really understand what is happening, or I'm not really sucked in there. Sometimes, even though these elements are there, the structure might not be solid. So we also have to talk about structure. And story structure is basically the order in which you take all these elements, the protagonist, antagonist, inciting incident, and then you present them to the audience. So basically the plot, which is what is happening in the story, the elements of the story, this is the thing that you use to give your story structure. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, you have to study this thing, but there are so many types of structure. We have the hero's journey, we have Dan Hammond's circle, but one of my favorite is the 3-act structure. It has a beginning, then it has a middle, and then it has an end. Basically, something starts, and usually this is the setup. This is where you introduce the world. This is where you introduce your protagonist. Basically in this world, these are the things that happens, and this is what the protagonist's life is. And if you're watching Lord of the Rings, this is when the hobbits are in the Shire, so you kind of know who they are. And then basically the inciting incident is what gives them that little kick to get out of their comfort zone and then go on the journey. And the middle is like the large part of the film where they go, they find friends, they get things together, they learn lessons, they find a mentor, and they grow. And as they proceed, they have the climax where they collide with the antagonist. Hopefully they succeed. Like I said, I love happy stories. So they succeed, and then there is a resolution, which is the Act 3 in the Lord of the Rings. They get back to the Shire and everything is good and they are happy. So the 3-act structure is one of the ones structure I love, but I think I'll share some other structures maybe next week or in the next video, so you have an idea of other structures that I might have. And like I said, I always try to share 10 ideas, 10 things you can take away from each video. I've been harping on story, so I'm gonna give you 10 podcasting ideas. Basically, if you're thinking of what can my podcast be about, here are 10 ideas you can have for your podcast. So you can have a podcast for beginners. And it's not just like podcast for beginners, can be beginning how to learn how to use your phone, or beginners to code, or beginners to making film. Basically, that's the concept. You can have a concept that's a day in the life of. You can have a business podcast. You can have a how-to podcast. You can have a comedy podcast. Comedy podcasts are huge. So, know that you have a lot of competition there, but you can also have travel podcasts, traveling, at least now with life kind of returning to some kind of normalcy. Travel podcast is good. Music podcast, I love music. I have a music podcast. It's called My Mix with Israel. I love it. Relationship podcasts, if you are into relationships or you have ideas for relationships, that's one you could try. Inspirational podcast and top 10 podcasts, because I just made a top 10 list. But you know what? one thing I'm going to say is that you have to understand that when you're telling a story to your own, and you are the only one in the entire universe that can tell that story the way you can. So it is important to own your story. This quote by Brenda Brown is something that sticks to me. Owning your story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that I'll ever do. So own your story. And of course, this assignment for this video is basically, again, listen to a podcast episode. To learn something, you kind of have to soak yourself, immerse yourself in it, and break it down using the 3-act structure. Like, oh, I think this is the beginning and a middle and an end. And then also think of what you like about the episode, and then share an episode idea for your own podcast. Break it down using the 3-act structure, and you can send it to me. My email is israel@lessonswithaking.com. I'll get it, and I'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you again for spending time with me. I can't wait to bring more information about story and podcasting in the next video.